The love affair between Cleopatra VII and Mark Antony wasn't simply a romance that changed history. It was a calculated gamble born from desperation, ambition, and the very human need for survival in a world where love and politics were inseparable. To understand why these two powerful figures risked everything for each other, we must look beyond the legendary passion to uncover the deeper motivations that drove them toward their tragic fate. By 400 BCE, both Cleopatra and Mark Antony found themselves in precarious positions that would make their alliance not just attractive, but essential for survival. Cleopatra inherited a kingdom in decline. Egypt, once the jewel of the ancient world, had become heavily dependent on Roman protection. The Ptolemaic dynasty had ruled for 3 centuries, but their power was now more ceremonial than real. Cleopatra understood a harsh truth. Without a powerful Roman patron, Egypt would be absorbed into the empire as just another province. Her previous relationship with Julius Caesar hadn't been born from mere attraction. It was a masterstroke of political survival. Caesar provided military protection and legitimized her rule against her brother Ptolemy XIII. When Caesar was assassinated in 44 BCE, Cleopatra lost more than a lover. She lost Egypt's shield against Roman expansion. Mark Antony faced his own crisis of legitimacy. Following Caesar's death, he shared power in an unstable triumvirate with Octavian and Marcus Lepidus. This arrangement was never meant to last. Each man knew that eventually one would emerge as sole ruler of Rome. Antony controlled the eastern territories, but he lacked the resources and popular support that Octavian commanded in Rome. The eastern provinces were expensive to maintain and defend. Antony needed wealth, specifically Egypt's legendary riches, to fund his armies and maintain loyalty among his troops. Egypt's grain shipments fed Rome, and its gold filled Roman treasuries. Control over Egypt wasn't just advantageous, it was crucial for any Roman leader with imperial ambitions. When Antony summoned Cleopatra to Tarsus in 41 BCE, both rulers understood this meeting would determine their futures. What appeared to be a romantic encounter was actually a high-stakes negotiation where each party brought exactly what the other desperately needed. Cleopatra's famous arrival, dressed as Aphrodite on a gold-laden barge, wasn't merely theatrical vanity. She was demonstrating Egypt's wealth and her own sophistication, showing Antony that she was an equal, not a supplicant. The message was clear. Egypt remained powerful enough to be a valuable ally rather than a conquered territory. But Cleopatra offered more than gold. She brought legitimacy to Antony's eastern ambitions. By aligning with the pharaoh of Egypt, Antony could present himself as a successor to Alexander the Great, who had conquered the East centuries earlier. This wasn't just about Roman politics. It was about creating a new model of leadership that blended Roman military might with Eastern wealth and culture. For Antony, Cleopatra represented escape from an impossible situation in Rome. Octavian controlled public opinion and had the advantage of Caesar's name and inheritance. In the East, with Egyptian resources behind him, Antony could build an independent power base. Cleopatra offered him the chance to be more than just another Roman politician. She offered him the possibility of becoming a king. Their personal attraction was real, but it developed within this framework of mutual necessity. Both were intelligent, educated rulers who understood power and appreciated competence in others. Cleopatra spoke multiple languages, was well-versed in philosophy and mathematics, and had successfully navigated Egyptian politics for years. Antony was a proven military commander who had helped secure Caesar's victories and maintained loyalty among battle-hardened legions. In Alexandria, they created what they called the Inimitable Livers, a court dedicated to luxury and intellectual pursuits. This wasn't mere hedonism. It was a deliberate attempt to establish a new model of rulership that combined Roman authority with Hellenistic culture, positioning themselves as inheritors of both Caesar's legacy and Alexander's Eastern Empire. The affair that began as political necessity evolved into something more dangerous: genuine emotional attachment that clouded strategic judgment. By 37 BCE, Antony had married Cleopatra in an Egyptian ceremony, abandoning his Roman wife Octavia, Octavian's sister, whose marriage had been arranged to strengthen the triumvirate. This decision reveals how personal feelings began overriding political calculation. Antony knew that abandoning Octavia would give Octavian justification for war, yet he chose Cleopatra anyway. The queen had given him 3 children, and their relationship had deepened beyond mere alliance into authentic partnership. Cleopatra's motivations remained more clearly focused on Egypt's survival. She encouraged Antony's eastern campaigns and supported his claim to territories that would buffer Egypt from Roman expansion. When Antony began distributing eastern kingdoms to their children, he was essentially creating a new dynasty that would secure Egypt's independence for generations. Octavian understood the threat this represented. A successful Antony-Cleopatra alliance would establish a rival power center that could eventually challenge Rome itself. The eastern territories were wealthy and populous, and with Egyptian gold financing Roman legions, Antony could potentially march on Rome as Caesar had done decades earlier. The propaganda war that followed revealed how personal and political motivations had become inseparable. Octavian portrayed Antony as a Roman who had gone native, seduced by foreign luxury and abandoning Roman virtues. This wasn't entirely unfair. Antony had indeed adopted Eastern customs and positioned himself as pharaoh alongside Cleopatra. For Cleopatra, this propaganda campaign confirmed her worst fears about Roman attitudes toward Egypt. She had always known that Romans viewed Egyptians as inferior, despite their civilization's ancient achievements. Octavian's attacks on her as a foreign temptress revealed that no matter how successful her alliance with Rome, she would always be seen as an outsider threatening Roman purity. The Battle of Actium in 31 BCE represented the collision between 2 incompatible visions of power. Octavian fought for traditional Roman supremacy: one empire, one emperor, centered in Rome. Antony and Cleopatra fought for a new model, a partnership between East and West, combining Roman military strength with Eastern wealth and culture. When their naval forces fled the battle, it wasn't just military defeat, it was the collapse of their entire political project. The dream of an Eastern empire died in the waters off western Greece, and both rulers understood that their personal relationship had become a liability that doomed their broader ambitions. Back in Egypt, surrounded by Octavian's advancing armies, both lovers faced the consequences of choices made years earlier. Antony had sacrificed his position in Rome for love and Eastern ambitions. Cleopatra had bet Egypt's independence on their partnership. Both gambles had failed. The false report of Cleopatra's suicide that led to Antony's death attempt reveals how deeply personal emotions had become intertwined with political calculations. Antony couldn't envision survival without Cleopatra because she had become not just his lover, but his entire political identity. Without her, he was just another failed Roman general facing execution. Cleopatra's decision to join Antony in death wasn't just romantic devotion. It was the final act of a queen who understood that her capture would mean the end of Egyptian independence. Octavian planned to parade her through Rome as a trophy, symbolically demonstrating Roman superiority over the ancient kingdom. By choosing death, she denied him this victory and preserved her dignity as Egypt's last pharaoh. The love affair between Cleopatra and Mark Antony began as a rational political alliance between two rulers facing existential threats. It evolved into genuine partnership and deep emotional attachment that ultimately compromised their strategic judgment. Their tragedy lies not in loving unwisely, but in believing that love could overcome the brutal realities of ancient geopolitics. Their deaths marked the end of both the Roman Republic and Egyptian independence. Octavian became Augustus, the first Roman emperor, while Egypt became a Roman province. The lovers who dreamed of uniting East and West instead witnessed the triumph of Roman imperialism over all other models of power. Yet, their story endures because it represents something profoundly human, the willingness to risk everything for love, partnership, and the dream of creating something greater than oneself. In death, they achieved the unity that had eluded them in life, buried together as equals in a tomb that symbolized their shared vision of what might have been.